Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast with Zane and David. We've got some post-draft stuff for you. I think the Steelers did a good job with what they needed to do. There are still some question marks that we're going to have to sift through, but I think overall, both David and I are fairly happy with what happened. Now, I think that we kind of were right in our first pre-draft episode that we probably weren't going to get anybody right, and I don't think we really got anybody right in this entire draft, minus maybe the mention of who we ended up picking in the first round. But as far as it goes, not our best work in our pre-draft stuff.
No, definitely not. I think they really almost surprised me in some of the picks of oh wow, I can't believe we actually just took that guy. Not necessarily the first rounder, but just overall, I was kind of oh, I know these names, but really? I'm like, wow, okay. So it was definitely just a surprising draft overall, but I'd say the word that I describe how I feel after is just content.
I think that's a great word for it. I would say that it's not going to blow you away by any means, but I think if you just look at it in terms of just the one through 7 rounds that we took, it was just a solid draft in that we didn't go for the slam dunk home run pick. It was just, let's go for the right pick at this specific juncture, which I was very pleased with. I'm glad, and we talked about this just a second ago, I was almost completely convinced that they were going to take Shadur Sanders in the first round, and my goodness, if they did, that would have been a complete fallout because we saw what happened with that.
Right, and I think that was definitely in my mind, but I was more hopeful. I was like, no, we can't take Shadur. We can't take Shadur. And I was glad, honestly, to see him fall as far as he did. I think he needed that. And the fact that he's on the Browns now is just quite hilarious, given that they drafted another quarterback and they have 5 quarterbacks on their roster. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, very thankful we didn't draft him. I was a little upset. I don't know. I wasn't surprised that he didn't fall to us, but when Dart got taken, I was like, oh, well, all right, moving on.
Well, the Giants even traded up to get him too, so you knew that they had a desire to get him. So, and honestly, I think again, it kind of goes back to what I was just saying. We didn't trade up, we didn't really trade back. We traded back once with the Chiefs to get another 7th round pick, which we'll talk about at the end. But we didn't try to rock the boat at all. Omar Khan was fairly pretty quiet. He didn't go out. He didn't get another 2nd round pick, which I think maybe I was kind of wanting him to. But at the same time, again, with what was available at each slot, I think that we did a good job. So let's break this down. Derrick Harmon is our 1st round pick, the defensive tackle out of Oregon. He transferred from Michigan State to Oregon. And I'm sure that you saw this, but the whole story with him is that his mom was kind of on her deathbed, and literally just almost hours after he was drafted, she passed away. And I saw something else earlier this week about how he was using his NIL money to get an accessible van for his mom. And that is that's a really, really cool story for me. And it almost reinforces how content I am with taking Derrick Harmon in the 1st round, because it's this is the kind of guy that I want in my locker room. Somebody that isn't so built up with his ego. There's a lot of these guys that they get drafted and it's all about them. Whereas for Harmon, it seems like nothing is about him. It's how much can I reflect, on other people, and how much can I make people around me better? And obviously has the tight relationship with his mom. So, it's a sad situation, but at the same time, it's such a blessing that he was able to celebrate this with his mom at that time.
Yep, I completely agree. My dad told me this story, and I just can't even imagine how that night how he felt. Just so many emotions. But I didn't know the story of him using his NIL money, which makes me love him even more. Because I was gonna say, just on the field, is very impressive. He is a game wrecker for sure. There's so many highlights and clips of him, like not only getting in the backfield, but like getting in the backfield and making the play. There's so many plays where he's 2, 3 yards across the line of scrimmage making a play, which I think we need. I think that's something that we miss a lot, and he makes the tackle. Like I feel like we don't. I don't know. This might be over the past few years. I don't know if it was just last year, but I feel like we miss a lot of early tackles. And I think he's a good tackler. He gets behind the line of scrimmage. I think it's an awesome addition. And it's not like he's coming in having to be the number one guy. Like you got Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton. I think that it really kind of solidifies this middle of our defensive line. So I was very happy with the pick.
Absolutely, and I'm right there with you. And I saw something just a moment ago, but there were some analysts that were saying he could have been a top 10 draft selection, but he had a some injury bugs with like a partially torn labrum and a rotator cuff just before the NFL Combine. So I think that's maybe why he even dropped as far as he did. But it seemed like he was an underslot guy to where his value was maybe a little bit higher projected in that first round, but the fact that we got him at 21, I mean, I think that this is a tremendous value, and I think it's a slam dunk. It's definitely an A for me if I'm giving it a grade.
Well, and I completely agree. I'd go A. And it's interesting. I wonder if Omar Khan has just kind of like an eye for that because we got Peyton Wilson last year, who also was like, he's coming off injuries. He's got injuries. And like we obviously saw how well he did this past season. So I wonder if that's something that Omar Khan just kind of like keeps an eye on because it's interesting that's happened 2 drafts in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing about it too is I think that maybe in my mind I wasn't super high on taking a defensive tackle, and I think that you were kind of in the same boat when we talked just last week. But I'm thinking about it even more and more. Cam Hayward's getting up in age. I mean, he does have a couple of years left, but how much longer are we really going to be able to rely on him? Keanu Benton, great interior defensive lineman, but I think with the value that we're getting here, and especially with at times last season where we were just completely failing to stop the run, I think that this just makes sense with the scheme of what we're trying to do. And I think you even said it where if we're going to win these games, if we're going to be a successful team, the line of scrimmage has to be the point of attack on both sides of the ball. I think we've been doing a decent job at bolstering up the offensive line. Now it's time to get back and get the defensive line bolstered up in a way that is going to propel us forward and get us back to this nitty-gritty football that we like to play.
I would agree. And I think this pick resembles that, and picks even kind of further down the draft resembles that a little bit. And so I'm excited that they kind of did pick in the way I wanted to for the most part of like getting back to, the line of scrimmage, the ground and pound, the tough defense. That's how we win. I think that this draft resembled that in most of the picks.
I would say so too. And funny enough, it's ground and pound up and down the draft, but it's also Big Ten up and down the draft, which is right in your ballpark.
I was loving it. I'm huge Big Ten fan. I mean, you guys know I've talked about Ohio State, and we had 2 Ohio State guys. So I was like, oh my goodness, like what is happening here? I was in love. The first 4 or 5 picks were just like there was 4 or 5 of them that were Big Ten guys, and I was like, oh, okay, like cool, I'm here for it.
Absolutely. So you should be pretty familiar with most of these guys. Let's drop down to the third round. Caleb Johnson is looking to be our new running back out of Iowa. He led the country in rushing yards and touchdowns this last season. Had 1,500 yards, 21 touchdowns. I think he had 23 from scrimmage, so he had 2 receiving touchdowns. And he was at 6.4 yards a carry, All-American. 6'1", 224. And here's the other big stat that I think might get undercut maybe at times. In 35 college games, he had 3 fumbles. I mean, this is reminding me of Najee Harris, but like better, if that makes sense to you.
No, I completely agree. Kind of talking about how he resembles Najee Harris, one with the ball, but also just kind of watching him run. Now, this part is a little different than Najee. He almost runs like no matter what he's doing, it's one motion. Like it's such a smooth like running that even when he's making a cut, like I was watching a highlight and I was like, was that a cut? Like he literally didn't change his movement or pace at all, and he like still made a cut. And I think that he compares to Najee in that he doesn't have that breakaway speed, but he is still able to get breakaway plays. Like he has had multiple runs over 50 yards and been able to run away from guys, even though he doesn't have that speed, which is interesting because I don't really think that Najee had a run over 50, maybe even 40 yards. And so I think that having like this big back who can do what Najee did, but then also add that explosiveness on the outside, I think I'm very excited about this. I don't know much about him personally, but I know that on the field, I think that he's a great addition. I think he's going to help out a lot with Jalen Warren with us.
I think so too. And kind of what you were wanting is somebody that isn't Jalen Warren, but that can supplement Jalen Warren. And now that we have Jalen Warren locked up for at least another year, I think this is a nice 1-2 punch that we can have. Because I think that the dual threat backfield that we had these last couple of seasons with Najee and with Warren, I think that played to our strengths because you like we've always been saying, you get Najee to wear him down, and then you get that big pop with Jalen Warren. I think this is kind of the same type of thing where, sure, Caleb Johnson isn't nearly as big as Najee, but he almost plays the same way. He's not looking to elude contact. He's looking to go right after contact. He can shed tackles, and he does have an explosive aspect that Najee just didn't seem to have. And like you said, his speed might not be top tier, but the way that he positions himself, the fluidity of his cuts, it allows him to have those explosive plays that we just never did see with Najee.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I am excited about this pick because you sent me a statistic that was the teams with like the highest run percentage, and we were, I think, in the top five. And two of those teams were in the Super Bowl, and I think the other two had at least a playoff win or something like that, or maybe like pretty close to that effect. And so I think that if we stay with the run percentage we're at, like the high run percentage, but you swap Najee for Caleb Johnson in theory because his average is like 6.4, it's going to end up being a lot better because Najee's average was never good any year that he was here. And so I'm hoping that like what we try to do with Najee is perfected a little better with Caleb Johnson.
Now, did you see that Omarion Hampton went the pick right after Derrick Harmon, and he went to the Chargers in
I
that
did.
first round? What do you think of that?
I mean, I don't know. If I were the Chargers, I feel like there's a lot of positions that you could have picked before that, like a wide receiver, or your defense is getting old. So I think that it was interesting, and I wonder how Najee feels about that. I wonder if they had prefaced like you're gonna, be sharing the backfield or not. I mean, he only signed, wasn't it a 1 year deal?
Yeah, it was.
So he probably like can't be too shocked. And so, but it's interesting. I don't know if I were a Chargers fan, I don't know if I'd be happy with that pick.
Well, I'm just thinking of it from the perspective of like the fact that he was there in the first round, but we passed on him to draft Derrick Harmon. But now it seems like, again, we're getting good value in the third round with Caleb Johnson. I was seeing that because I think also that the Broncos, I don't know if they actually traded up, but they took a running back ahead of Caleb Johnson, and he wasn't ranked nearly as high. He was like this 5'8", kind of a shorter Jalen Warren type of running back,
Yeah.
and it was not nearly as high up on the draft boards as Caleb Johnson. And it seems like, we kind of got away with one here where it's another case of where the value was really good where we were picking, and, we just took kind of the best value that just so happened to be a position that we needed.
Well, and that's like the best of both worlds. And that's what, I mean, we both loved about Omar Khan these drafts is that it really seems like he knows what he's doing and he knows how to get the best use out of his picks. Like, I think that, like, if it were you and me doing that, we may have seen Omarion Hampton and pulled the trigger. So, but he, kind of, he knew what he was doing. And so that's something that I appreciate about him a lot. And I think that it's cool that we can see that as the draft goes on and see how like, oh wow, like, and hopefully it does turn out well, like we're hoping it will. But it's like it'll be crazy to look back and see, like, man, we could have gotten that guy, and yet we still get this guy 2 rounds later.
Right, right. So we're 2 for 2 here, I would say. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So now we get down to the 4th round. Actually, before we get to that, I do want to say one more thing about the Caleb Johnson pick, because we talked about cornerback a good bit in our pre-draft episode. And by the time we got to the Caleb Johnson pick, almost every single cornerback that was even worth thinking about was off the table. There was one guy from ECU, I forget his name. I believe his name was Chevelle. Chevelle Jr., I think was his last name. But he was kind of like a dark horse, like, yeah, maybe we'll pick him kind of in the middle rounds. But he had already been picked even by the time we got to this Caleb Johnson pick. So it seemed like cornerback was a hot commodity in this draft, and maybe this is why we didn't see a corner come off the board, in the 4th to the 7th rounds until, our last pick, which we'll talk about at the end. But again, I think that, maybe this was kind of a reactionary thing on the part of Omar Khan saying, okay, like, we didn't get any of the corners we wanted. So now from here on, let's just kind of get some luxury picks, if that makes sense. Because by now we didn't really need much else. I mean, corner is a need, and I think it's still a need, but the next 3 picks, we've got edge, another defensive tackle, a quarterback, and then a linebacker, which really none of those were anything we were really needing coming into the draft. So I think it is interesting to kind of juxtapose that and to kind of know that pretty much none of the quarterbacks, or cornerbacks, I should say, were really worth taking by now. So I think that was an interesting little bet.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's a good point, because I mean, even looking at our cornerback pick, which we'll talk about later, it's just interesting. I was thinking about this on my way back from work. I can't remember a time, especially like 3rd round and on, but just in general, that we have hit on a cornerback in the draft. I mean, it's had to have been at least 10 years, I feel like. Like, I do not think that we've had one. I feel like the big cornerbacks we've had over the past 10 years have been free agents, like Joe Hayden or other people like that, which I would have loved to have seen this year, and not someone who was on his way out the door like we've been doing. So I'm definitely content with not taking a cornerback, just because we especially in the late rounds, we don't really have much success with that. So I'm glad with what we got instead of that.
Okay. So let's move on. And now we get to our first Ohio State iteration. We've got Jack Sawyer, the edge, 6'4", 260 pounds, versatile, it seems like, against both the pass and the run. I'm just going to defer this to you, because I'm sure you can talk about him a whole lot more than I can.
Yeah, so I love him. I mean, I can't remember. He's been playing for a long time with Ohio State, so I've watched him a lot. He's a great player. He really does remind me. There's another edge rusher from Ohio State. I don't know how to fully pronounce his name. Tuta Moau or something. Then they remind me of Watt and Highsmith, like the way they would get after the quarterbacks, in a way that, like, there was multiple games where it was like me and my dad would be talking, and we'd talk about them like they were Highsmith and Watt, where it's like, man, if they don't make plays, we're not going to win the game. And so I think that he has that ability to be the X factor. I mean, we saw that when he beat Texas with that sack force fumble touchdown, which was awesome. And so I'm thrilled about this pick. I love him. Now, my immediate thought was, and my question for you, do you know how many years Watt has left on his contract?
I think that this is his last season under contract. If I had to guess, I think that's what it is. It might be 2, but I think that this is the last year.
Okay, and that's what I thought, and this was my question that I want to propose to you, because my mind went immediately to this because of the peace sign that TJ Watt put up. But I was like, is this pick almost like a, hey, you're not getting signed again to TJ Watt? Because it's like, wow, we have Watt, we have Highsmith, we have Herbig. I love Jack Sawyer, but do we need Jack Sawyer? Like, do we need another edge rusher? And so in my mind, is that like, all right, we've given you the money we want to give you, and you can go somewhere else. We just drafted somebody new. Did that come into your mind at all, or was it just more of like a luxury pick?
Well, I think it can kind of be both, but I mean, you can't help but think about that. I mean, that's a real possibility. I guess the question is, how much do we value? Maybe I'm kind of, I don't know, kind of ducking your question away, but maybe the question is like, how much do we really value Highsmith and Herbig? Because we have Highsmith locked up for at least some tenure. And then Herbig has kind of been like, the third guy, kind of the guy out of the bullpen to give our normal edges a rest. But I mean, you can't help but think that has to be a possibility in their minds. Now, is he going to be the big playmaker that the TJ Watt is? No, I don't think that that's really a possibility. I don't think his ceiling is nearly as high as that, but you know, I don't know. I think maybe because I did see as well, like pretty much all of the AFC North, they all took some edge rushers. I mean, there was a lot of edge rushers that went to, the Ravens and the Browns and the Bengals. I think the Bengals specifically, they didn't have many draft picks this season, but I think one of them, I believe it might have even been their first round pick, but he was an edge rusher and an explosive one at that. So this might kind of be the security blanket, I think, for the corners of our defensive line. So I don't know. I don't want to think about the idea of TJ Watt being in a different jersey in 2 years' time, but I mean, again, you see the peace sign that he put on his Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and maybe he's just trying to stir the pot. I don't know, but this is kind of how Steelers players go, at least in these last couple of years, is it's just a lot of drama with these guys. So I don't know what to think. I don't really want to think about it, but at the same time, it has to be something that you are considering.
Yeah, and I certainly hope not either, because I don't think anybody can replace TJ Watt. And so I hope it's not that, because I love both. I like this pick. I think that he could be a really good, and I guess too, also thinking about it, like, so we have those three guys, Highsmith, Watt, Herbig. But, when Highsmith was out and Herbert would come in and Watt came out, it would always be like, who the heck is that guy that's in there? So I really like this and that, like, okay, we'll know who this guy is. Like, he's not just some practice squad guy who we found. So I think that makes me happy, because I think that that's been something where, like, seeing somebody else in there besides Watt, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, who is that? And instead it's like, okay, I know this guy, we're okay.
Well, even kind of what you were saying, even just about Jack Sawyer when he was at Ohio State, it's like, if he's not in the game, then we're in trouble. And it's the same type of thing where, what if Watt gets hurt? What if Highsmith gets hurt? Because Highsmith has gotten hurt a handful of times in the last couple of seasons. And it's like, then we don't have really any depth, because it's going to be some combination of Watt and Herbig, or Highsmith and Herbig, and then we have a problem. But again, it seems like that this is more just quality depth. And if that's the case, then I'm completely fine with that. It might have been a slight reach. I think that he might have been a lower ranked edge rusher than maybe some other ones that were on the board. But I think kind of just going along with the idea that we're taking a lot of Big Ten guys, I think that this might have been the biggest or the best year for the Big Ten in a long time, just with how successful it was. I mean, would you agree with that?
I would agree, and I think that, like, before even the draft, you could see, like, there was a lot of good teams in the Big Ten. You saw that in the bowl games. So I think it makes sense that the draft was so good Big Ten wise. I think it was just, I saw something that, like, people were thinking, like, oh, is the pendulum about to shift, where the SEC's 10-year reign's kind of ending and the Big Ten are picking it back up? I certainly hope so, because that would be awesome. But I think that you can see that in the draft, specifically kind of what you're saying, where it's like, wow, a lot of Big Ten was taken.
Yeah, especially. So again, I think this is a solid depth piece. And, if he turns out to be, better than advertised, then I'm all for it. And I think that this is, not like you said, nobody's going to replace TJ Watt, but if you have to, this is a good way to start doing that.
Yeah.
So going to round 5, again, we got another Big Ten guy, Yaya Black from Iowa, defensive tackle, 6'6", 335 pounds, a lot of pass deflections and a lot of tackles for loss in the last 2 seasons. Down there a good bit, not very high on a lot of people's draft boards, but seems like, again, a really solid pick in terms of just his character. I kind of stalked his Instagram a little bit to kind of see like what his character's like. It seems like, I don't know, have you seen a picture of him? Like, have you ever seen like, okay, so he literally looks almost exactly like just like this 1970s Pittsburgh Steeler. He already looks like a grown man. He's kind of got like the Fu Manchu mustache, literally looks like he could be like straight out of the 1970s team, which is super cool to me. And I think that, it might just be this hard-nosed guy that the Steelers are trying to get. And again, bolstering the line of scrimmage. This is another way to do it. It's another defensive tackle, but I can't be too upset with it. I think it's a solid pick as well.
I would agree. I don't know him too well, but I know that Iowa has had a stout defense, one of the best defenses in the Big Ten. So, I mean, any defender out of there, I think. I mean, look at what wasn't Cooper DeJean from Iowa, so I think they can produce some defensive guys. So I trust in that, and I also. Yeah, I mean, his physicals kind of speak for himself, and adding that along with Derrick
Harmon,
yeah, Derrick Harmon, I think that our D line is going to be awesome this upcoming season. And so, yeah, again, another pick I'm excited to do.
Again, it just seems like the Steelers saw the run being a problem at times, and they're like, all right, we're not going to get beat like that. You are going to beat us through the air, and that kind of seems like the way that teams are going to have to beat us this season is with their quarterbacks and their wide receivers, because I don't think the running backs are going to be going super far against the Steelers this season.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, here's your boy, 6th round pick out of the Ohio State University. We did take a quarterback, and his name is Will Howard. Let's talk about this because it's down there. It's definitely a value pick. You know him very well, and he is the reigning national champion. So, what do you think about him?
So I was shocked. I couldn't believe that we actually took him because I thought at that point Shadur's gone. I'm like, all right, forget about quarterbacks. And then we take him, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like okay, like this is interesting. And I don't fully know how to feel about it because I do like Will Howard. I probably like him more than most because I'm an Ohio State fan. However, he had a lot of ups and downs throughout the season. I'd say that like he had a couple of games that were really rough, specifically the Michigan game. He just did not play well at all. And I think that but then he goes and has an amazing playoff run. Like statistically, it isn't like the best thing in the world, but he played great in those playoff games, specifically like the Oregon, Tennessee game. And, it was for the most part mistake-free football, which, you can't ask for much more than that. And so my concern with him is that you could tell that from that Michigan game to the playoffs, he was coached and he was developed and he grew into the quarterback that he became in those playoffs. Now, who knows? That could be very similar to what I thought about CJ Stroud, where until that game against Georgia, I was like, I don't really know if this guy can make it against or in the NFL because he couldn't beat Michigan and he just had a lot of errors. And then in that Georgia game, he balled out like an NFL quarterback. And now we're seeing he's putting together a good start to his career. So I'm hoping maybe, hey, Will Howard loses to Michigan, has an amazing playoff run, and maybe he turns it around in the NFL. So my only concern is, we've said this a million times, we don't really develop players. So I'm weary of that, but I think that he is going to become, if he is under the right coach, of course, a Kirk Cousins. I think that he is a game manager. I think that, like what I said, mistake-free football, I think pairs perfectly with our defense, just go get points. I don't know if he's going to make the splashy stats that, I don't know, Jackson Dart or Cam Ward's going to make, but I do think that at the round we got him, I think it is a very solid pick, and I am hopeful for it.
Now, I guess my next question is, what are your QB comparisons for him? Because he's a big guy. He's 6'4", 236. And I was watching a little clip of, so John Gruden, the former Raiders head coach, he does this little segment where he kind of he interviews these quarterback draft prospects, and he kind of just picks their brain. He's like, okay, what would you do here? What would you do here? Explain this defense to me. What do you see here? And he's just trying to understand their mindset. It seemed like John Gruden was really impressed with Will Howard, and to the point where he was starting to say, you're the best quarterback in this draft, which the fact that he's taken in the 6th round, I don't know if I completely believe that, but again, at the same time, it's well, Tom Brady was a 6th round pick. And I'm not saying that this is going to be Tom Brady, but it does seem like he has the attributes, to be, be a really good value pick here. And I hate to say this because I don't want to jinx him, but I've seen comparisons to Josh Allen just with his sheer build and the fact that he also has a running component to him as well. That he does have the ability to work in designed runs, which I think that, Mike Tomlin does enjoy to some extent. So I guess the question for you is, what is your expectation for him? Is he a bridge quarterback to get to the draft next season? Is he one to sit behind some Mason Rudolph or some Aaron Rodgers? Or is this guy's ceiling super high and we just might have drafted, the next starter for the next 10 years or something like that?
I think he could be the starter for the next 10 years. I think that he has that ceiling. I don't know if he's necessarily there yet completely, but I think he has the ceiling to be the starter the next 10 years. And I would love, I would prefer it to be Mason Rudolph, but whether it's Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph, I would love to commit. I don't know about a year. I would lean more towards a year, but I would love to just commit to let's give him a year. Let's give him some time. I think that's Mike Tomlin. I think he just gets so impatient, and we've seen that at least twice now throughout his career, where he's just been all right, put Kenny in, Mitch isn't doing anything. All right, Justin Fields lost 2 games in a row, put Russell Wilson back in, he's healthy. It's no, stick with a guy for a full year and just see, because and let Will Howard develop more. Let him learn the NFL. Let him study the defenses. If you're saying he has a great mind, who knows? Maybe he's ready to go already. But I think I would like to give him some time to develop, and I think he could be the future of the Steelers, but I don't know. He definitely doesn't seem like the perfect quarterback, but I do see a future in him.
Now, I guess the question is you're saying give him so Mike Tomlin is impatient at times. Is it okay for Will Howard to go out there this season and the Steelers to go 7-10? Is that a okay outcome based on what you're saying?
That would be okay with me. I would be fine with that if he has a good year. It has something that we can build off of, and it's still 7-10. I'm totally fine with that, because to me, that's almost the same thing as the wild card exits we've been having. It might even be better because we know what we are. I think we play like we're 7-10 these past 2 years, but we're 9-8 or we're 10-7. So, and who knows? Maybe a losing season might get Tomlin out of here, which I would, love. So, I wouldn't be opposed to it. If they say he's going to be the starter, I wouldn't be opposed to it, because we kind of know what we have with Mason Rudolph. Aaron Rodgers, I've said a lot, I don't want. So it would not be worst case scenario. I definitely would bring some excitement if he were to start off the bat.
So what's the scenario if we get another Kenny Pickett situation where Mason Rudolph starts the first 4 weeks and then halfway through week 4 we get Will Howard? What's your response to that?
I think I would be frustrated because I'd rather Mason or Will Howard start week 1. Because I think there's something to say about putting a guy in when they're in the hole. And like, oh, like we're 1-3, we're 0-4. I've got to crawl myself out of the situation. Like, it's like, the weight of being a rookie, add 50 pounds to that because, you're on a bad team, not starting well, and you're supposed to come in and save them. I think that Kenny Pickett felt that pressure. I mean, you were there in that first game. He aired it out deep immediately, and it's like, would he have done that if he had started week 1? Like, would he have done that if he didn't feel like he needed to charge the Steelers up? So I really don't like that situation specifically for a rookie quarterback. So I think that would frustrate me like it has in the past. So I'd say that the best case scenario, I don't know, kind of thinking about it more, rather just starting him and just, going with it from the get-go, rather than I wouldn't want to see him mid-season, we're not doing well, come in, because I just don't think that's a good situation for a rookie quarterback to come into.
Well, as a part of that too is like I think losing is also a valuable part of somebody's development. Would you
Yep.
agree?
I would definitely. I think like we've said it a lot where it's like sometimes you gotta lose to get to winning. And so I completely agree with that. Like you learn so much more in losing uh than you do in like, winning. Cause when you're winning, you don't gotta fix anything. But when you're losing, it's really you gotta like look into what's wrong. What do we need to change? What do I need to fix? So I do think that losing, obviously, you've got to have the right head on your shoulders, but losing does increase development significantly.
Well, even thinking about it too, he is the only quarterback right now that is a reigning champion. He is the only quarterback right now that is coming off of a win. So it's like,
Yep.
I think that it definitely has to be somewhat valuable for him to understand what it is like to lose at the NFL level, to say, hey, I know that your senior season, it was pretty darn easy for you, but it is not going to be this easy. And that means that we have to develop you. It means that you have to learn. It means you have to do trial by fire. And again, I think we both are thinking the same way here. That is a good thing. It is okay to lose if that means it's going to push you forward into winning later on.
Right. And I think that, like, one thing, it would be nice, like a battle tested quarterback. It's not as similar. I'm trying to think of guys, but Aaron Rodgers didn't even make the playoffs his first year starting. Tom Brady, obviously his first year starting, he like filled in from Drew Bledsoe, won the Super Bowl, but the year after that they missed the playoffs. Like, and then they won back-to-back Super Bowls and like lost like 4 games over those 2 years, something like that, maybe 3. So I think that, like to your point, losing helps, especially I think in your young career. You learn these things. Peyton Manning was 3-13 his first year, had the most interceptions I think a rookie has ever thrown in a season, maybe even a quarterback in a season. I think that might be the statistic. And look at him; he's one of the highest decorated quarterbacks statistically speaking, and he has 2 rings. So I think that like it's definitely beneficial. And you could even go back to just the senior season, like losing to Oregon. It was like, oh, okay, a little wake up call, and we won 5 more games. And then losing to Michigan, I mean, that woke up the whole team. And you could see Will Howard from that point forward being clutch. In the Texas game, he had an amazing game-winning drive that Jack Sawyer sealed. And then in against Notre Dame, he clinched it with it wasn't a game-winning drive, but it was a game-ending drive. So I think that he has that ability. So, and I think he's been beaten. He's been beaten like, if you're an Ohio State or Michigan fan, you understand this. He's been beaten at the highest stage in college football you can be beaten in, at home against Michigan. That's like the lowest of lows that you could experience. So I think that he can handle 10 losses or even a few more in the NFL.
Okay. You're talking him up, and I'm getting even more excited.
I am. Which is interesting because I think that, like, man, a month or 2 ago, I probably wouldn't have spoken this highly of him, but I think he's grown on me more and more as I look back on the past season and, the more I hear about him.
Well, I'm hoping that your Ohio State bias isn't coming too far into this, but I'm gonna stick with it for now. I'm not gonna chastise you. I'm not gonna say otherwise. I'm just gonna say, hey, let's roll with it.
Yeah, and remember though, I do tend to be a positive thinker. I said Kenny Pickett was going to win the MVP, so I don't know if I'm the best rule of judgment, but we'll see.
But the nice thing about it is that he's a 6th-round pick. He's not a first-round pick. He doesn't need to have the weight of the world on his shoulders. He does not have to be a 15-time Pro Bowler because we have another draft this coming season and it's going to be in Pittsburgh. And, if things don't work out, then there's a whole slew of good quarterbacks to take in this upcoming draft. So I think, again, it just makes so much sense. And I think it's Omar Khan managing his assets very well right now and even thinking into the future. So again, I think that this is a great pick and I don't have much bad to say about it. All right, our final two, and we'll kind of group them together. Carson Bruener, the linebacker from Washington, 6'1", 227 pounds. He had 3 interceptions last season as a linebacker. It seems like he's kind of a ball hawk. If I had one way to describe him, he kind of he sees the ball and he goes and gets the ball, which I appreciate that. I think that's that's a good attribute to have. And, playing at Washington, they did not have the best of seasons this year, but I mean, national championship just 2 years ago, if I'm remembering that correctly, right?
Yeah, they were there.
So this guy, he's played in some big games. He kind of knows, he knows his way around. And again, I like his attributes. Is he going to pan out, to be a starter, even a backup? I don't know, but it's a solid pick. And again, it's a luxury pick. It's a linebacker. Do we need a linebacker? Not necessarily, but it doesn't hurt to have extra depth there, especially again with how many injuries we've had at that position for a while, and especially thinking about how Cole Holcomb is coming off of about a 1.5 year recovery from his injury. It's nice to have a little security blanket there.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I like the depth that we had, and I do hope that he builds up to a starter, but I know Danny Smith is really high on him, so I think he's going to have an immediate impact in special teams.
That's a great point. I forgot to mention that too, and I appreciate you bringing that up. He is an exceptional special teamer, and that was what they were saying is that, I mean, he's going to get NFL looks almost right away because of how great he is on special teams. And again, we pride ourselves with our special teams, and if our unit just continues to get better, then, you can't be upset with that at all.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I love the late pick, and I'm excited to see. Hopefully, he has as positive of an impact as we've talked about.
All right, our final pick, which this is kind of the most volatile one. Dante Kent, you laugh. Dante Kent, a cornerback / punt returner out of Central Michigan. Central Michigan, Antonio Brown. Hey, let's see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sus at anything coming from Central Michigan. I mean, you never know what you're going to expect. You got the 6 best seasons like a wide receiver's ever had, and then obviously the collapse that happened after. So it's like, who knows what we're going to get? And it actually is funny to think about, like, obviously it's not funny like what happened with Antonio Brown, but like that parody of like greatness and then just collapse. The statistic you sent to me and our other friends is that like he had like what, top 3 or something in like pass breakups, but then had the most explosive plays given up. So it's like that is the epitome of just like, oh my gosh, what do you even think of that? And so I think that statistic definitely worries me, and I think that the jury's still out on him because of what I said earlier, where it's like I can't remember the last time we've hit on a cornerback, so I don't really have a lot of faith, especially since the 7th-round pick, that we're going to hit on this one.
We had Corey Trice several years ago, and I think we both liked that kind of pick in the 7th round, but at the same time, this one kind of seems like a boom or bust type of guy. The specific statistic, and I'll read it, he had 47 passes defended in his career, and this last season, he was number 1 in FBS in passes defended. However, he was second worst in FBS in explosive plays given up. So he is literally all or nothing. And it seems like all that these MAC teams did was just toss him the ball. And, he would either he would either get it off, he would either get it out of there, or they're running for a touchdown the other way. So it's all or nothing with this guy, it seems like. So, which again, I don't mind it, and it does seem like he is a half decent punt returner as well. Which I think that might even be a niche need that we kind of had, because if I'm being honest, I wasn't super impressed with our special teams returners this last season. I think Cordell Patterson was not nearly as good as advertised, and even when we threw like Calvin Austin in there, it just wasn't as good. Maybe this is a nice little mix-up to give him a chance to get on the roster. And, at corner, who knows if he sees the field much at all, but even just at that special team spot, I don't mind this at all.
I agree, and it's interesting because Antonio Brown, before he got like big, he was returning punts, and he made a lot of plays returning punts. So I agree. I think that we didn't really have a lot of splash going on in the punt return business and kick return. So I would love to see that addition. And who knows, maybe he sounds like he's war torn, but targeted a lot. Maybe he learned a lot, and if he can defend as many passes as that and kill, the explosive plays, which who knows, that like having Deshaun Elliott and Mika Fitzpatrick in your backfield could help diminish that. So he could be something good, but we'll see. I'm still uncertain about it.
Yeah, 7th round pick. You can't be super upset with really anything they would take. Now the only thing is though, and I was waiting for it. My guy Tez Johnson was available at this time in the 7th round, and we passed on him, and he ended up he went to the Bucks instead. So
oh wow.
If I had to choose, I would have taken Tez Johnson in the 7th round. I think that is incredible value. Again, a 7th round pick, how often do they pan out? Pretty much never, unless you're just Brock Purdy and your Mr. Irrelevant just turns into something incredible. But, for the value of a 7th round pick, I kind of wouldn't have minded Tez Johnson there because, again, he was available. And I was looking at that. I'm like, darn, I kind of wish we would have gotten that. But at the same time, I can't be too upset. Again, it is just a 7th round pick, but if Tez Johnson turns into something good, then you will have heard it from me that I wanted him and that he was available. And, that is what it is. Now, I guess, did you see this yesterday? We signed Robert Woods to a 1-year, $2 million deal.
Oh, wow. I did not see that. That actually makes me very happy because I think that now the past couple of years, or well, I guess just the past year, he was on a really bad team, but he is a great role filler. Like going back to those Rams teams, the one that went to the Super Bowl and lost. And I can't remember, I think he was in Houston for a bit. He was somewhere in between. I forget where it was, but I think he's a great role filler. Like, never been a number one, always like tends to be a number 3, really. And I think that is a really good depth pick. I think that, or he reminds me of like Tyler Boyd almost. Tyler Boyd obviously had a higher ceiling than him, but I remember last year it was like, oh, we should get Tyler Boyd or somebody like that. And I think that Robert Woods emulates that where he's at in his career. So I love that.
So I'm completely fine with that too. And for $2 million, that's pretty darn cheap, and you can't be upset with that at all. So I'm a big fan of that. And the fact that we didn't take a wide receiver in this draft, we didn't really need to necessarily with DK. And I think spending capital on a wide receiver, especially now that we do have Robert Woods, it wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense. So I think Omar Khan, again, he just played his cards right pretty much at every selection this draft. And again, he didn't shake things up a lot, but I think he did a lot with what he was given. So I'm very pleased with it. What would you give our draft overall?
Overall, man, I'd say like A- or A. Like, I feel like there's not a lot of complaints here or picks where I'm just like, oh, really? Like, I'd say, it might not be the splashiest thing in the world, but I'd give it an A. I don't feel like there's much that I'd say like, that's wrong.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'd give it an A, an A-. Again, nothing super flashy, but I think everything was just the right pick. And I think another thing too, and I tried to do this a little bit, just kind of looking at these guys' characters, but I think these guys are so much better for the culture of the Pittsburgh Steelers right now than all these flashy guys that, It's all about me. I think all of these guys are, grab my lunch pail, let's go to work, and let's go win some football games. Every single one of these guys. And I see that quality in all of them. And I think that if we can get out of the way of ourselves, then this team's going to be more successful because we've seen way too much drama the last several seasons. And if we can get rid of that, even if it is by just inserting young talent into it that is team driven and team oriented, then I think that's an absolute win. And I can't be upset at any of that.
I completely agree. And I know, like, specifically from the Ohio State guys, like that Ohio State team was a team. Like, it was like they were brothers. And I, loved that. So I hope that they really kind of bring that into this team. And yeah, I miss the days when we didn't really have a lot of controversial guys. Like, I think that was like the Steelers' motto was like, next man up. There's a story of like the year or two before we won our first Super Bowl, Mean Joe Green was gonna like leave and like he was tired of it. And Chuck Noll was obviously like, I want you, like you're a valued member of this team, but it's like next man up, it's like next guy can do your job. No one's indispensable. And I think that we're starting to lose that a little bit where George Pickens and some other guys think they're indispensable. And so I would love to get back to that. Like, no, we're a team, like almost like the Penn State, like there's no names. Like it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like I want that.
Yeah. And in a way with the Ohio State guys that we picked up and the Big Ten, the theme of the Big Ten in this draft, it's not, it's like the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know you like to put the, you know what I mean?
I love it. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of this draft, and I think again, Omar Khan did a great job with what he was given, and at this point now we see if we really go after Aaron Rodgers. If we do, I wouldn't be surprised necessarily, but if we don't, I think I would be fine with that. I think I'm okay with what our roster is. Does it still have holes? Absolutely, and that doesn't excuse the fact that I think we were a little bit too quiet in the free agent market, but I think that we did a decent job of just making the overall quality of our team better. And I think it's going to be better for several years to come. And even if it isn't better immediately this coming season, then again, we've got a draft in Pittsburgh and we've got a lot of picks in this upcoming draft. We've got, I think, 2 third, fourth, fifth, and sixth round picks in this upcoming draft. So we have a lot of capital to work with. And if there's any time to have a down year, it might as well be this upcoming season.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I didn't realize we had that many picks. So, I mean, yeah, and in that case, thinking about our future, I would much rather see Will Howard start over Aaron Rodgers. I really don't want us to get Aaron Rodgers. I feel like it's going to be a similar outcome as probably not as bad, but as the Jets. Like, I don't really see, like, we're getting younger, we're adding depth. It's like, I just don't think even though we think we're kind of a little directionless, I don't think he fits the message that we're kind of going for and what we're building. So I don't want him.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. Well, this is our post-draft analysis for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Both David and I like the draft. I think we're going to be continuing in this discourse for a good bit of the offseason. And as always, Boardman Black and Gold is sponsored by Zecca Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. You can call 910-777-3871 to turn your furniture problems into furniture solutions. Keep an eye out for some more Pirates episodes. I'm planning to get a couple of those out as well. At the end of April, I think what I'm going to do is just kind of do some monthly recaps. So once the month of April ends, which will be, just a couple of days from now, we'll kind of recap the Pirates month, the ups and downs of the month. And hey, we're going to have some more Steelers episodes as well. Once they release the schedule, we're going to get that episode out as well. We'll kind of predict what we like for this season, predict the games and, kind of see how things go. And I think we're going to have a couple of other, just some niche episodes in here with the Steelers. I have a couple of ideas. I'll run them by you off air, but we're going to be back here for some Steelers talks this offseason. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right here where we've been. And the Steelers, hey, good draft. Can't be super upset. And we're going to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to keep talking about the Steelers. I'm excited to check into the Pirates podcast because I'm more of a fan than an analyst as you are in baseball. So, I don't have much to add, but I do love hearing about them. And I keep up with them. And, the Pirates are definitely a roller coaster team. So I'm excited to hear more about those.
Pittsburgh sports, up and down, up and down.
Yeah. Well, oh my goodness, we don't have time in this episode, but we could have talked about the Penguins and what happened there recently because that was crazy.
Yeah, all bunch of stuff with the Penguins. Maybe we shouldn't get on that soapbox because we'll be here for a while.
No, oh yeah, we'd have to add another hour.
Well, we've talked an hour already, and we'll let you guys go, but we will be back at some point for another Steelers episode. Keep an eye out for that Pirates episode, and Zane and David are out on the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.